guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So today we're going to talk to you about acoustic guitars and everything you should know. Body size makes a difference in overall tone and volume output, of course. Part of that too is your setup as well. If you're gonna, the lower you bring your strings to the fretboard will affect your volume output a bit, okay? There was a time I didn't believe that until I actually noticed it on my own Martin guitar, which I'll get to in a minute. But there's a lot of factors involved, all right? Now, I've got two guitars that they're pretty much identical to each other. This one is mine. This is a CC60 SCE, which is a Fender guitar too, by the way. This is an acoustic electric with a Venetian cutaway. Right, so you get access to the higher frets, and it does alter the sound, by the way, of the cutaway, which you will hear the difference. And I wanted to do this as one against the other of the same model. My wife's is a CC60 Dreadnought, but no electronics. Now, when you have an electronics box, regardless of the size of that physical box, be it a small, tiny one like this Fishman, or a larger style one, you will be changing the waveform inside, your sound waveforms, your resonance changes. It's kind of like when if you put your hand on your guitar in a certain spot, it can actually dull the sound or make it brighter, right? Because you're muffling one to allow the other type of thing, right? You're dampening. Kind of like when you're string dampening when you're playing. Okay, you dampen the sound. So where your arm is and what you're trying to get away with, okay, you can hear that hopefully. Hoping you heard that anyways. But anyways, so your nut material, your saddle material, your bridge pins if you have a bridge with pins. A lot of acoustics do, more do than that don't. My Takamine GD30 has a pinless bridge, so it's actually a string through, and it's rosewood. But even the bridge material that the bridge is made out of that holds the saddle makes a difference on the sound. And of course placement as well, but placement is very specific because of what they call scale length, right? So let's say we want this bridge and we wanted it down here somewhere. That's going to change our fret spacing, okay, in order so that you can play the notes in the right spots, but also you're going to have to intonate this thing, which means the saddle and the angle that it is now might have to go straight across instead of on an angle. Or we may have to take out the compensated saddle and put in a non-compensated saddle to recorrect intonation because of where the placement is. So things are done on a more critical level, but also for looks as well, because who wants to see this bridge way the heck down here, you know, because then now we got to take our sound hole and we got to move it, which means our fretboard now has to also be longer to compensate for fret spacing in order so that everything is correct for this is an F, this is a G, this is an A, this is a B. They have to be in the right space, which is a lesson I learned on my own building my own little baritone ukulele. Which I learned a lot from that and from trying to do stuff all on my own where I should have actually, you know, done a little bit more research before doing certain things on it, and it would have turned out a lot more, we'll say, playable, because my notes are actually out a little bit, even though the string's tuned, my intonation's great. It's the actual notes that get played are just not where they should be, because I went off the basis of my Chord X2 guitar for my fret spacing, thinking, well, you know, it's a baritone guitar, so why not just use that spacing? And then we had to condense things in, and then I didn't think about, oh, well, scale length and this and that, and it's like, oh, you know, so you learn, right? First attempt at building a guitar too, hey, it actually turned out good, you know, like it looks great and it sounds good, but it's different. So we're going to play a little bit here. Okay, so that's this guitar. Now, that's my guitars, by the way, are all lefties, except I own one right-handed guitar, which a lot of you know about why I bought that white cork guitar, and I still play it, and I'm still teaching myself righty. I just need to start spending more time on it because I've been neglecting it a lot lately. So this is my wife's CC60. It's completely stock, right? Except the strings are the same gauge of strings, same brand too. They're Diodarios and they're 11s. And like I said, I can't remember if it's 1152 or 1153. I think if I remember right, they're probably 1153s. But either way, they came with 12 gauge strings, both guitars. 11s are a lot easier to play because you don't have to push as hard, which is kind of nice, and still being at the same, proper tuning, right? Works. And who wants to press hard anyways to do bar chords? I'd rather be able to do the bar chord and play it well than to do the bar chord and it turns out sounding like really crappy. So the 11 gauge is nicer, and I have nothing against 12 gauge strings, but ever since I went to 11s, which my first experience with them was on the Taylor 314 that I had. That thing came with 11s from the factory, Elixir Nano Web coated strings, and oh my gosh, oh, what a nice sound. And so I tried a set actually on my Takamine, and they sounded really good. But for some reason on the Takamine, they didn't last as long. Probably due to the fact that it's a bigger body guitar, it's more tension on the strings than on the Taylor 314, because it's a concert-style guitar where my Takamine is more fuller size and more robust of a guitar, and everything's under a much tighter load pressure-wise, because you have X amount of pounds of pressure on each string to tune it to proper pitch, right, in standard tuning. And so anyways, so this is her guitar, and it's full dreadnought. It's all the same woods, same nut material, same saddle material, same everything there, right? So just no cutaway and no electrics, and of course it's right-handed, which left to right doesn't make that much difference, but it does make a little bit of difference, I think. But anyways, let's give this one a listen to. Same pick we're going to use too. Missed the E. Missed the E a little bit here and there. Self-correct, let's just... Alright, so I am more than hoping anyways that you guys can really hear the difference. This thing is louder, the sound is more rounded, and it does have a little bit more tin to offer, okay, because it has more down in this section for wood to allow that tin to come out, right, that trebly sound, where you reduce treble output with a cutaway guitar. And like I said, some people will make you try and believe that that's crap, but you've heard it for yourself. Okay, so let's go once again here on mine. You can hear it. Okay, one more. One last one on my wife's guitar here. So There is a huge difference, and yet they're the same woods. And the only difference is mine's a cutaway, left-handed, and mine's acoustic electric. This is right-handed, which when you think about it, even logically, even though there is a difference, it's not a huge difference between left and right for the sound, but there is some definite difference. They are built in accordance to being left or right-handed because of, twist tensions and, all that other jazz. So they compensate for all that between left and right-handed. So even if I took, a left-handed version of this guitar or a right-handed version of mine, you're still going to hear a difference in sound either way. No two guitars will ever play the same. Okay, they'll never sound the same. They'll never play the same. Even if you check the intonation out, at the 12th fret, there's going to be differences between every single guitar. Whether it's you're checking all left-handeds, all right-handeds of the same model, they're all going to be different. Even if I take 1,000 more of these of the exact same model, and being right-handed, or 1,000 more of mine left-handed, same model, none of them are going to sound or play anywhere remotely close to each other. And even the setups will be different. Even if I try and tweak the setup to be exactly identical, they're still not going to sound the same, even with the same strings on them. So that's the thing. Even strings are not made 100% equal, even in the same brand and gauge and type of string, right? And so we do tend to buy different strings at times. I used to really like the Fender strings on the acoustics that came with the Fender strings. My Martin came with Martin strings, but I prefer it with the D'Addarios. I used to love Martin. I used to swear by Martin as being the best string for any guitar that I've ever owned, and I've always used Martin lights, and they were 1254s. But then I got onto those the Elixirs, and I was like, they're great on the TAC. Never did try a set on here. But then I tried the D'Addarios because my TAC Mini came with D'Addario coated strings, and boy, they were beautiful, lasted a long time, great sounds. Why don't I keep using them? Because they're almost twice the money of the non-coated, of the exact same string. And I do like the sound of these strings, they're great. And I also dropped to 11 gauge from 12 as well. These are also the same D'Addario 11 gauge strings, but on my Martin. And my Martin, you can tell it's got a thinner body, it's got a larger electronics box for the electric pickup. It's got more features on it too than my Fender. I've got notch control, phase control, brilliance, bass, mid, treble, volume, and the tuner, and there's a lot of buttons here. It's cool. So, and wider string spacing on the Martin, wider neck too than my others. I love the sound of this thing. And yes, I upgraded the tuners to gold tuners, but they're not locking tuners. And they are Chinese tuners, and they're working actually quite awesome on this guitar. Though I'm really starting to appeal to the Grovers. They're a more robust tuner and a much higher turning ratio. I'm actually looking for a really high set. I found a set of 21 to 1s that I want to put on the Martin. And they're gold as well, and they got a nice kind of a vintage antique embossment on the tuners and on the thing. They're made, I think it was it Gototh, or I can't remember the brand. I'll have to look them back up, but really awesome tuners. But these will do for now, and they are great tuners even for Chinese tuners. They work great. So when I say Chinese tuners, I mean made in China, bought in China, and they were very inexpensive. But they do work great. And if I remember right, they were a 14 to 1 on those. So this is my Court, completely stock guitar, except for I drastically lowered the saddle. Now my Martin, I was going to mention that, my Martin had the saddle really high, which was kind of good to put out a little bit more volume. Lowering it lowered the volume a bit, which was good, but at the same time it also smoothed it out and made it more pleasing to my ears to listen to, because the higher bridge, I couldn't handle the playing with the high action that way, and it also prevented me from adjusting the neck, which was another thing. Same as this guitar, I didn't have much trouble with this one. But I lowered it, mainly the saddle. I took about half the meat almost off the saddle to lower it right down subterranean. Like, the height of the strings is just, it's so incredibly low, I'm surprised it doesn't buzz. And these are fat frets. These aren't mediums. These are the fatter frets. And this is an amazing guitar in itself. Same strings as the others too. So, great guitar, you know, really happy with this thing. Now, if you were to remove the finish from an acoustic guitar, whether it be paint like this, or whether it's a stain only, or, you know, because you want to remove a lot of that stain and bring the wood back out, stain will change the sound of your guitar. But even the coating, whether it be nitrocellulose, polyurethane, whatever they've used at the factory, you'll still always have a little bit of that left in the wood, no matter what you do. But if you could strip it basically down to what we call bare wood, you will change the sound of that guitar. Now, some people will really adore and love that sound. Other people might get a little puked out, because it does make a huge difference, actually, in the tonal response of the wood and everything. So, now, there's guitars made out of, you know, solid rosewood, laminated rosewood, sapelli. You can pretty much name any wood out there that's in use in production of guitars. There's combinations of those woods, or even just the whole wood right throughout the same wood, like all mahogany, for example, right? And they all have their own unique sound to each other, you know, and you can control that sound a little more with strings, because strings do make a big impact, not just in gauge, but in type and style of strings. So you've got a coated string versus a non-coated. You've got, you know, your bronze strings. You've got stainless steel strings out there. There's all different types of materials the strings are being made out of for regular guitars, and all guitars, in fact. Even acoustic classical guitars are nylon strings, right? Well, there's different types of nylon strings where the strings are made out of, you know, a certain kind of a nylon material that has an additive of this or that, or they've minus something out to add something different in because they couldn't mix those two chemicals to make that nylon string, whatever have you on that, okay? But strings make a huge impact on the sound of your guitar without even changing anything else. Same as in your electric guitars, which will be a whole nother video, but even on electric guitars, changing from one string gauge to another, even in the same brand, huge impact. One brand to another in the same gauge, huge impact on sound. You know, it's just incredible how much the sound difference really is. You know, so the only people that don't notice any of this are those people who are actually deaf or tone deaf. And what I mean by deaf is not an insult to anybody. It's just that musicians, we're generally deaf in a lot of ways because we spent so many years blasting the sound into our head that we actually cause ourselves to go partially deaf, right? And, you know, so that is the thing with, you know, I've never really super overblasted for massively long periods on a continual basis. I've blasted my stuff, trust me. I used to crank my stereo up and crank my guitar up and just go out to town and just play all day, you know. But I wouldn't do that every single day either. But I also, because of the tailored sound even in music that I listen to that I like, I'm not in danger of blowing my lower high frequencies in my ears because of the way I like to dial in sound, because of the type of sound I want to hear. And that's the same with my guitars. Each one I've handpicked out for what they are to me, of what I'm after for a sound. And then if I found that, you know, it wasn't quite working for a few things, I would change to a different string. And so my Fender, well, all my acoustics are now running D'Addario 11s on them, and I really like that gauge of string and that brand too. And I still do like a Elixir Nano Webs, but they just don't seem to hold up on my Takamine. They held up really great on the Taylor 314, but just for some reason, I don't know why. Maybe it's the amount of tension they're under on the Takamine, because they are under a lot more stress tension pull when they're tuned up on the TAC than what they would on the 314. And someone's going to say, well, isn't it all the same? No, actually it's not, because scale lengths are different. Tension is different too, to get it up to pitch for that scale length so that it will tune and be intonated right for that guitar. So yes, there are differences. So anyway, so the Nano Webs don't last that long on the TAC. So I just, you know, I kind of cheap out and I just buy the non-coated D'Addarios, which last me quite a long time actually. And because my hands don't sweat and I don't have high acid output in my skin, which I'm quite surprised, because the amount of acid going into my body from Diet Cola, you would think, right? But I don't have the acidic output that a lot of people do. I've heard of people that can play their guitar for 10 minutes and their strings are rusting. That bad, okay? You know, so I don't have those issues in life, so I'm kind of thankful for that. But, you know, there's a lot of factors involved in guitars, how they're built, the reason why things are done the way they are on every guitar. You know, buying a really expensive guitar too doesn't mean it's going to be a better sounding instrument or even a better playing instrument, and many of us have proved that already. And I've even taken some pretty lousy, crappy quality guitars, put a little bit of work into them, and they play and sound just as good as like a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 guitar. It's just that they don't care as much on the cheaper guitars at the factories to take off the sharp fret ends or do a proper fret leveling recrown. They don't take the time to even care about putting in the electronics properly, like solder jobs, for example. You clean up a soldering job alone, even on a cheap little Area Pro or a Hondo, cheap Hondo. I had one before. Even, let's get to the Epimity, Silvertone guitars. Those things are very garbagey guitars out of the box, but spend some time on them, clean them all up. Wow, even with the stock pickups and you set up the pickups just right, beautiful guitars in the end. But yeah, unless you know how to do the stuff, it's considered to be garbage, right? So it's like, that's why you buy a more expensive guitar, because you're cutting your hands apart with that piece of junk, you know. And a lot of people think of it as junk, and it really isn't. It's just, it needs a little bit of TLC and a little bit of extra care and quality control, which, you know, you can do yourself, and it's a lot cheaper than taking it to a guitar guy to do it. But anyways, so that's what we got. Tone wood exists, it's a very real thing, but there's other things than just the wood that makes up the sound and tone of your guitar, and you can change that sound and tone like that, okay, even just with a string swap, even keeping the same strings and going to a different type of material for your bridge pins. Now, I was talking to you earlier about my string-through bridge. This is my Takamine with a string-through bridge, and then the bridge is made out of rosewood. Very nice sound, and it gives more contact to the body and the bridge this way with the strings for resonant frequency. So it creates a very unique sound, along with the two-piece split saddle and so on. So here's the TAC. Same strings as all the others. This guitar, and it's obnoxious to boot. Very loud, big-bodied guitar, you know. I mean, this thing's got some output to her, and you know, I really like the guitar. I think it was worth every penny, you know. just a really beautiful instrument. And got the electronics, bass, mid, treble, main volume, tuner. My battery lives up here, which is cool, a nice little display there. You know, but more basics. You know, my Martin has more features on its set than what this does. You know, this has, you know, what you need to get by with. But it's all, you know, bass, mid, treble stuff, and you can custom tailor the sound to reproduce that sound a little bit better through a PA. You know. So anyways, same pick too. So that's what I got for you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you got a lot out of it. I probably missed something somewhere or another, but you know, if you have any questions, feel free to ask as always. I'll do the best I can to answer them. There will be a video coming up. I'm not exactly sure when, but it will be dealing with the all about electrics and the sound effects and how things work with those in comparison to acoustic guitars. Catch you later. Ciao.